All right, I'm going to go through this one more time. One of the most important things about working on blocks as a group is to make sure your 1/4 inch is correct when you're sewing. The way I get this to work is to take and measure my 1/4 inch from my needle on my sewing machine. If you have a removable foot, remove the foot. If you have needle up, needle down, I put it needle down. If you don't, you can use your twist on the right side to bring your needle down, and actually bringing it down to the point is the best place. Then you take your ruler and you find your 1/4 inch, and I use the very center of the line that is the 1/4 inch, and I put it to the very center of the needle. And I use other pieces on my domestic machine, like the door on my bobbin, to make sure that the ruler is straight down. Then I take some painter's tape and I make a layer. And I put it up against the ruler, just behind where the foot's going to be, and put it down. So I now have an accurate 1/4 inch.
Lynn, oh,
Yes, Sandy.
I was gonna say things got real fuzzy, but then they cleared up, so go ahead.
This block is called a diamond in a square. It has a center square and 4 triangles. When you're wanting to put the triangles onto your square, you need to have a center reference point. So the best way to do that is to fold your fabric. I'm going to fold my fabric raw side to raw side. And I'm going to put a gentle crease in the center and a hard crease on the edges. Hard creases with your fingernail so that it really stands out.
What size is that block?
This block is 9-inch square. The
Thank you.
size of the block that we're going to have at the end should be 12.5-inch square.
Okay,
So the center block is 9-inch by 9-inch. You can mark the hard crease that you made with any instrument. Just make sure you stay in the seam allowance area when you're marking it. Sometimes it helps to be able to see exactly where that crease is. And you can do that in both directions if you want to just get it done and over with first. Gentle crease in the center, hard crease on the edge. I'm using a Frixon pen that will iron away. They do leave a little residue after it irons away, but once the quilt is washed, that residue washes out too.
It's in the same too.
That's true. But I actually use the Frixon pens in other areas where it might be seen in some of my projects. I do test it ahead of time to make sure that it will wash out, or it will iron out, excuse me. All right. One tip is if you fold your one piece raw side to raw side, fold your second piece finish side to finish side. Now, a lot of times we have a general idea we're going to match these 2 points and fold it out. That's not a good way to do it. You want your point to match up to your other point over here. So it's more important to start with the point of the triangle and match it up as you go along. I'm using the wrong hand so you can see better. This is better. So as you fold it, crease it toward the other side from the point, and do a hard crease down at the end of this triangle. And then again, if you wanted to mark it, just so you can see it, everybody has different needs, so marking it sometimes helps. And when you match this triangle to this square, you're going to want to have those two, since you folded them in the opposite, the little peak should rest into each other. And here's another trick. Hold after you get that crease in a crease, and you've got the soft crease up here matched up with the point. Hold it at the hard crease and smooth it out toward the edges as you're lining it up. Two things for this: gets all of the wrinkles out of it. The other thing is, a lot of times the fabric will adhere to each other just a little bit and hold it in place better. Okay, so now we're ready to sew that. Make sure the first part of your sewing area is underneath your needle. I have it leaning up against painter's tape, so I know I'm going to get a 1/4 inch proper. And I'm going to take one stitch, and then I'm going to take a back stitch. I try to keep it just to one stitch, so if I have to rip, it's easier to rip out. And then as you're sewing, make sure that the material is up against the painter's tape, but not pushing too hard that it's going to crinkle. And just guide it as it goes. Pay attention at the end that your pieces match up, even if you have to hold the little tip of the triangle. A lot of times it wants to waver out. When you get to the last stitch, take one more little back stitch. And then cut your thread. Turn it around. And put your other triangle on the other side after you crease it. So since I did this back to back, I'm doing this front to front. And I'm using this point first and matching up that side down. I'm easy creasing at the top and I'm hard creasing down at the seam line. And I'm marking if you need to mark. This material is a little dark, so having an extra mark in there helps me to see. But if you did the creases correct, they should lay inside of each other. And you should be able to see up here whether the point is on the gentle crease in your bottom piece. Again, holding it from the center, I'm going to smooth it out toward the edge while I'm lining up the seam line.
Just so that I'm sure exactly what you're doing, those triangles were cut from a 6 7/8 inch square block, correct?
Yes, that's correct. You can go bigger if you
Thank
wanted
you.
to go to 7-inch. Feel free to do that because we're lining it up at the center here. It will just be a little added extra over here and I can take and if I need to trim, I can trim it down to 12.5 inch. It's okay if it's a little bit bigger.
Okay,
So if you want to
Thank
make it
you.
easy on yourself, you can cut that square into 7-inch and then cut it in corner to corner to make the triangles. And again, we're going to sew, butt it up against your tape, take a stitch, take a back stitch, and sew it all the way down, guiding it near the tape. Take a back stitch at the end and then cut it off. We were talking during the last little section about how to iron it over. You can use your regular iron, but I like to come in and finger press it. Let me see if I can get you smaller so I can show you. It's not letting me. Okay, so you can finger press it just with your finger, but it does push the fabric a bit. Christine brought out a roller that she used, and that was really cool. It's just a wooden roller that one of the companies put out to be able to press your seams with the roller so that it doesn't push or pull. I have this type of finger press as well, so that you, once you finger with your fingers, you can come back and just roll it on here to make it even flatter.
This is what the other one looks like.
Yeah. Let me, hang on, let me highlight you as well.
This one's by Violet Craft.
There we go.
And it's kind of has a, it curves. Riley Blake does make another one and I cannot find it. Lori Holt makes it and it is flat. It does not have this arch in the center. I have no idea what I've done with it,
But that's cool. Thank you for sharing.
yeah.
Oops, wrong one. Okay. So you iron over the two sides that you just did. And the reason I use my fingers at first to do this is because sometimes if you use your iron, the material will get wrapped like this and give a little extra seam looking thing here. If you do this with your fingers first, then you usually don't get that. And I'm going to take a hot iron to that as well. Remember, when you iron, you're not trying to stretch your material, you're just trying to get it to go over. All right, and then we're going to work to the next two. Again, starting from the point. And hard pressing the edge. And matching it up to the other hard press we have over here. Smoothing it out to the edge while lining it up, holding it in the center. And then sew like we did the other sides. So I did a silly thing. I used my Frixon pen and I marked it here earlier. And I ironed it out. But I can still see the little ridge where the original is. And if you look in the center here, the little soft press that's at the ends of these all line up into one line. That way I know that this point and this point are going to be in the same exact place on each side. And I should have given this information at the very beginning. This block is called a diamond in a square. It's going to measure 12.5 inches when it's completed. And we're trying to have a dark triangle, all the same color, around a lighter center square. The center square measures, before you sew it together, 9-inch square. And the triangles, if you take a 7-inch, it's really on the paperwork, it says 6 7/8. But if you wanted to do 7-inch and cut it in half, that's fine. So if you take a 6 7/8 square and cut it in half. Matches perfectly to the 9-inch. But if you want to use a 7-inch and cut it, as long as you match up the centers, you're fine. And we will put these all together for a hospice quilt. So 2 important parts to this is these little dog ears should have a 1/4 inch from the point to the edge, so that when we sew them together, they have enough seam allowance. It doesn't matter if they come across this way where they're odd like this, as long as the point to the first edge is 1/4 inch or the point to the second edge is 1/4 inch. If there isn't enough there, we're going to have to fudge a little bit when you put them together. So the seam allowance will be a little bit smaller in there. But what you really want to happen is for it to be like this, where they match up. Let me get it closer to the, so you can see. Both sides match each other, and there's a 1/4 inch from here to here. Oh, too high. Both seams, both of these lines match each other, and there's a 1/4 inch from here to here. This is a real simple block. I thought we would start with this first because it'll ease us into working together. And I like to hear y'all's tips and tricks as well. When we did hospice, when we were in COVID, we were sharing a lot of things and I learned a lot. So I was hoping that us getting together once a month for just a little while and doing a block together, we might share things that others might learn from too. So that's all I had. I'm going to stop the recording now.